An agreement has been reached after 3 weeks of talks between the Democratic Alliance and 7 other parties. This, of course, relates to forming a coalition government. The parties have agreed to work together in 4 hung municipalities in Gauteng. For more reaction, political analyst Jamie Mightie joins us now. Jamie, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. You know, I can't say the latest developments around Action SA are surprising. I mean, a lot of people implored the DA to reach out to some of the parties that had voted for its mayors and draft some sort of an agreement for a smoother running of municipalities. But I remember Action SA specifically saying that they weren't necessarily interested in MMC posts, just keeping the ANC out of power and for better services for the people. But this latest development of the health and social development portfolios offered by Ekurhule's mayor suggests that the delay might have been as a result of some sort of horse trading. What do you make of that?
Well, I think you're partly right that there's been a shift in the Action SA approach to their negotiation. They've definitely now tried to get some seats and get some position that helps them in upcoming elections. Like if you look at some of the conversations in Johannesburg, they are going to get a seat in safety, in infrastructure and in development planning, with Herman Mashaba taking the infrastructure portfolio. And that's important for him because then he can continue to have conversations about reclaimed buildings, abandoned buildings, and hijacked buildings, which has been a large part of his brand in being somebody who is fixing the cities. So I think you are correct that part of the delays were caused by the fact that Action SA and other players were actually trying to negotiate for better positions and actually moving away from their original strategy. Initially, they'd even said include the EFF in negotiations, and then Julius Malema said, no, don't include us, go and have conversations by yourselves. And then there were also some delays with the Patriotic Alliance, which we're seeing reports from Sunday Times that they were also approached, but Gauteng McKenzie apparently was making demands that the DA could not acquiesce to, and as a result, that kind of fell through. But it does look as if there's some structure here in Mogale City, in Ekurhuleni, in Johannesburg, and Tshwane now.
In terms of Johannesburg, we also understand that there was some sort of disagreement around one portfolio being financed. Were you aware of this, and what would be the reason for Action SA to really want this specific portfolio?
Well, I mean, I wasn't privy to any of these kind of discussions, and, they would be quick moving. But looking at the reporting that has come out, it does look as if the finance was one of the portfolios that they wanted, along, of course, with infrastructure. And part of this reason is because Herman Mashaba has used his finance argument that he cleaned up the finances of the city of Johannesburg and that he was pivotal to that. And obviously, part of his brand and part of his argument has been that he is a competent businessman and somebody who needs to be given the financial portfolio so as to handle it. But finance is a very important portfolio in any structure, be it a political party, a university, or even a city. And obviously, the Democratic Alliance would not give that away because basically you're giving away the purse. And it does look as if the Action SA was not able to get this. But it does look as if also the DA had to make big concessions because they're giving 5 MMC positions to, smaller parties and keeping 5, which is not what initially seemed to be the case, because they seem to have this attitude that they're not going to be led by others, they're not going to share equally or anything like that. So it looks as if they've made some concessions in order to get the stability which is much needed to actually govern a city.
It's honestly an interesting turn of events from where we come from at the beginning, just after Mabalane was now elected, because at the beginning they all stated that there are no agreements, possibly there will be none, but now we heard that really at the heart of the delays was that they were trying to somehow negotiate with some of these political parties. Do you really think that position would have been sustainable if they decided to go that arrogant route of saying, you know what, you voted for us without us requesting you to do so?
Yeah, I don't think it would have been actually, and I think it was a very naive approach from the Democratic Alliance and a misunderstanding of their electoral power, because the results showed us that they were the party that actually lost a large amount of votes in percentage terms, in fact, even more than the ANC. So even though, you're leading an opposition coalition in terms of you have more votes than other players, it's very arrogant to say, well, we're not going to make deals with you, we're not going to engage with you, because that's simply not how coalitions work. look, every partner in a coalition is necessary for you to have the power to govern. And we've seen it in other countries where smaller coalition partners do extract a lot of concessions because they are necessary for the governing to happen. And so it does look as if there's been a mellowing of perspective, and maybe other people who've come into the room who have more diplomatic approaches outside of John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille, because at the beginning they were the ones driving the conversation, and their narrative seemed to be one of take no prisoners. But I think they've realized that they do want the gem that is Johannesburg. They do want to govern Tshwane. These are critical metros in the history of South Africa and in the economic playground of South Africa. And so they decided that, look, it's better to have these territories and have to deal with the difficulties of governing as opposed to just dismissing our partners and making it seem as if we can go it alone, because simply the voters did not give them that mandate.
Now, speaking of Joburg, we expect an official announcement this week. But Joburg might be a bit difficult because we know Herman Mashawa's views around directing services to the poor. And just before the elections, there was talk of the city taking over from Eskom in Soweto, but the new mayor has already got off on a bad start with the residents who accuse her of being some sort of a spokesperson for Eskom by alleging that they just don't want to pay for electricity, when they say Eskom, in fact, removed meter reading boxes but hasn't installed prepaid meters yet. Will Joburg really be an easy one if we had to factor what Mpho Moerane actually started with trying to absorb Soweto?
Well, it's going to be difficult, and I don't think any of us should sugarcoat it, because, they've got a very robust opposition in the ANC who want to come back, and we've already seen that there have been disturbances, in Soweto as a result of the 6,000 Rand request from Eskom. And there's some tension with the mayor because people are saying, look, you haven't spoken to us, we're indigent, we can't particularly afford this thing. And also, you are maligning us and using broad accusations when those don't universally apply, and also that there is a very harsh impact on those who do require an uninterrupted power supply, for instance, those who have to refrigerate their medicines, and that all will have a bearing on how coalition partners move. But it does look as if they have the IFP, it does look as if the ACDP is happy, and it does look as if Action SA will be happy to take infrastructure, safety and development planning. So when it comes to those partners, it looks as if there are no problems. We will have to see what the Patriotic Alliance does, what the EFF does on the meeting on Tuesday, but it does look as if they've got enough to make the MMCs and to get going with the business of governing. The question may then be, when it comes to necessary concessions that have to be made at times of passing budget and special votes, will they be able to garner all 136 votes in order to be able to make sure that they can deliver? And that remains to be seen, because right now the EFF is still holding their cards to their chest, and we know that they are a critical player in this equation as well.
But the tone of the economic freedom fighters has somewhat softened of late, because they've consistently stated that, yes, in as much as we're not in a coalition agreement with the Democratic Alliance, we will vote if they actually have a pro-poor budget. They've always stated that, to a certain extent, they will put the needs of the people and service delivery first. Wouldn't you say, in that respect, if they present a pro-poor budget, they'd actually receive the EFF's vote?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the EFF have said, and you're absolutely correct that that's been their position, and it's been a very moderate position and not a harsh one. I think the question then really is, what is a pro-poor budget? And you may find that's where you may have some clashes and some contradictions. But what I'm seeing is that Mpopalatse, the mayor, Dr. Mpopalatse, it seems to me to be somebody who's willing to make negotiations, make concessions, even from the deals that we're seeing that have been made here. They are really win-win deals for a lot of the coalition partners, where concessions have been made across the board. So I do anticipate that they will be able to actually make deals that the EFF is also comfortable with. It does look as if the EFF is happy with this arrangement and is looking at 2024 as their next big fight. And so they may not necessarily be interested in upsetting an arrangement that can be stable up until 2024. But that fundamental question of what is a pro-poor budget and the tensions that are beginning to emanate from the Eskom issue may create some roadblocks ahead, because I don't anticipate that this is the end of the Soweto Eskom saga at any stretch of the imagination.
We don't anticipate either, but I must say this is then a lesson that perhaps you do need to allow the regional leaders to be at the forefront of these negotiations, where you just don't have perhaps leaders at a national level speaking on what should happen in Johannesburg. But now we heard Mfundo Mabalane, who had that tone of some sort of collective effort or working together, consultative spirit of sorts. So hopefully it will work out in Johannesburg. But thank you very much, Jamie. That's political analyst Jamie Mightie speaking to us on the latest on coalition developments. Now, still to